Let's talk again about the practices of a bodhisattva. Today we'll discuss in the practices of a bodhisattva how to transform objects of desire into the path. All delightful desires are like salt water. The more you indulge, the stronger your craving becomes. If you become attached to things that arouse desire, immediately abandon them. This is the conduct of a bodhisattva. Even if you obtain the objects of your desire, such as beautiful sights and pleasing sounds, fragrant smells and delicious tastes, and soft sensations, form, sound, smell, taste, and touch, all these delightful pleasures and merits are like the enjoyments of a celestial king. But they are just like drinking salt water. The more you indulge, the less satisfied you become. If you drink salt water because it's very salty, the saltier it is, the thirstier you get, so it's impossible to quench your thirst. It's the same with worldly things. If I have $100, I want $1,000. If I have $1,000, I want $2,000. With $2,000, you want $20,000. With $20,000, you want $100,000. With $100,000, you want $1 million. In this way, human greed is limitless. Instead, it only increases attachment and suffering. Therefore, clinging to worldly perfection is the source of many problems in this life and the next. For this reason, anything that can make us develop attachment, whether it's general enjoyments or specific things we desire, whether big or small, whatever suits our preferences, we should not claim them as our own. In order to eradicate attachment, we must give them up immediately. This is what all children of the Buddha do. They transform objects of attachment into part of the path. Of course, this is very difficult. Whether it's towards people or things, it's very hard to truly let go of attachment right away. Recently, I've had the opportunity to meet some esteemed khenpos and some monastics who truly live very simple lives. Whether it's in their own homes or not, they have basically dealt with all their personal belongings, except for what is necessary to sustain their lives. They basically have nothing else. Their lives are truly very clean and pure. Some of us, on the other hand, keep accumulating and accumulating things. You can even see it in our own rooms, inside and out. Everything is packed full, piling up higher and higher. In fact, learning to subtract is very important. If there are things you don't need yourself, you should set aside a special place for items to give away and just let them go, pass them on. Otherwise, even just at the entrance, books and all sorts of things are piled up together. If a fire were to break out, it would be really dangerous. When I went up today, on both sides of the road, there were so many things, maybe from elderly Buddhists or something. They pick up everything they see, but in reality, most of it is probably useless. Sometimes, aside from what you truly need yourself, whether it's a few pieces of clothing, some food, or a place to live, apart from these, a lot of miscellaneous unnecessary things should be dealt with as early as possible. It's even better if you handle them yourself before you pass away. That would be preferable. In the Lalita Vistara Sutra, it is said, "The more you desire, the more harm and sorrow you bring, with fear and constant afflictions as your enemies." If you are attached to desires, the harm is also greater. They often bring fear and afflictions. It's like the edge of a sharp blade or the leaves of a poisonous tree, or like a vessel for vomit. That is why sages will certainly abandon them. To the wise, all worldly pleasures, no different from vomit. Saltwater drinkers are never satisfied. Greed and desire's faults are described in the chapter on causes and conditions. Even if a rain of precious jewels falls, the greedy are never satisfied. The benefits are few, the faults are many. This is well understood by the wise. The words of the wise basically tell us that even if you shower someone with gold and silver treasures every day, a fool will still not be content. Look at how many of the world's billionaires today, no matter how much they are worth, they still desperately try to earn more. In the sutra on the questions of Anaupama, it is also said, anything that gives rise to attachment and does not foster a mind of letting go should be abandoned. In the letter to a friend, it is also said, all sensual pleasures ultimately bring disaster. The way of the Bodhisattva also states, whether in this life or the next, desire brings calamity. Even in this life, it is desire that gives rise to suffering. Indeed, relying on desire may eventually lead to regret. But by the time you realize it yourself, it is already too late. There are countless disasters that arise from desire, both in this life and the next. Many faults of sensual pleasures are explained among these teachings. These are the general faults of attachment to sensual pleasures. Then, speaking in detail, attachment to worldly gain, respect, fine wine, beautiful women, immense wealth, and material possessions. Each and every one of these has many inherent faults. as we discussed last year. In the sutra on the arising of the supreme aspiration of bodhisattvas, it should have discussed the 20 faults of seeking gain, and the 20 profound merits of giving the sacred dharma, the 20 faults of sleep, the 20 faults of distraction and commotion, and what else? There were many topics covered. These are all things we should look at from time to time. Especially the sutra on the arising of the supreme aspiration of bodhisattvas. It is truly excellent. It explains, yes, the 20 faults of excessive speech. Because when you talk too much, you create a lot of karma. The 20 faults of distraction and commotion. The 20 faults of sleep. And then, as mentioned earlier, the 20 merits of giving dharma and so on. I hope that maybe we've talked about this before, but sometimes when explaining, we didn't pay much attention. And then looking at it again, it's like, wow, if we engage in too much idle talk, it really doesn't mean much. If I sleep too much, it doesn't mean much either. So as practitioners, we really should take a look at these. You see, here as well, profit, fine wine, beautiful women, and so on, these kinds of faults. But we won't elaborate on them here. Completely letting go of attachment and relying on contentment and few desires is the most praiseworthy. In the letter to a friend, it also says, the Buddha said, among all wealth, contentment is the most supreme. Therefore, one should always be content. True wealth is contentment without possessions. Everyone has studied this in the letter to a friend. The way of the Bodhisattva also discusses this. Free from craving, one acts with ease, unaffected by anyone. Even kings and princes find it hard to enjoy the happiness of contentment and a simple life. So even the worldly kings and deities find it very difficult to experience the merit of contentment and having few desires. The Sakya aphorisms also mention this, don't they? Even Indra, the king of gods, finds it hard to enjoy the merit of contentment and few desires, not clinging to pleasing things. Those are truly wonderful things. If you are not attached to pleasing things, like thinking, this piece of clothing looks so nice, I want to buy it. Or, wow, this fruit tastes so good, I want to. Or, wow, this house is really nice, I want to. Or, wow, this carpet is especially good. Or, this phone is really good. Or, this iPad is also quite nice. Some people with strong desires find that when they go to a department store, they don't have enough money for everything they want. But for those whose desires are not so strong, some relatively poor people are content and have few desires. Some people are content and have few desires because of poverty, but it's not necessarily because of good spiritual practice. They simply have no choice but to be content. Even if you want more, there's nothing you can do about it, but that's okay too. Actually, if you are not sick, and there are no major issues, especially for monastics, life really shouldn't be stressful. Honestly, in today's world, those without life pressures are probably only a small number of monastics. A monastic, at the very least, doesn't have to worry about whether they'll starve to death or whether there will be nothing to eat tomorrow. They probably don't think that way. Naturally, when it comes to family, except for a very few, they don't have many burdens. Relying on the blessings of the three jewels, relying on the blessings of the Buddha, naturally, for the most part, even if you don't actively work, you can still comfortably survive. Indeed, in this modern day and age, there's no real need to constantly worry about not being able to adequately make a living for yourself. People like this are even rarer now. Especially after the pandemic, everyone should be aware of this. Everyone is thinking about it day and night, wondering how to keep on living. The pressure is especially great, this kind of pressure. But generally speaking, monastics might feel that whether there is a pandemic or not, it's more or less the same. So when we have this kind of life, everyone must cherish it. Cherish what, you ask? We should listen, contemplate, and practice the teachings. Everyone should try their best to listen to the teachings and also to practice. As for practice, it should start right now. Don't keep thinking, I'll practice well in the future, maybe after I turn 60. That definitely won't work. This includes us young people as well. Every day we should spend at least half an hour sitting in meditation ourselves. When meditating, use what you have learned. If you understand teachings about the nature of mind, of course that's excellent. If you really don't understand these teachings, then take what is taught each day. The merits of contentment, few desires, the suffering of samsara, karma, the merits of bodhicitta. On these topics, you can close your eyes. So keep your eyes open and keep contemplating them. This kind of contemplation is not very difficult. This is called analytical meditation. If we only know how to give teachings and lectures without actually practicing them ourselves, in the end, it really won't have much of a significant effect or impact. Just having good intentions alone sometimes isn't enough either. So we should frequently take these Buddhist teachings and reflect on them again and again in our own mind streams. If you reflect on them repeatedly, eventually the content from the books becomes your own. Because right now, what we have in terms of theory is just something our eyes see as theory. Then we think about it a bit in our minds and talk about it with our mouths, but it still hasn't truly become our own. If you take the principle of impermanence, for example, or say today we talk about the faults of desire, or the merits of being content with little desire, not only do you understand it theoretically, but also within your own heart, you truly feel that being content with little desire has great merit. Then this principle has already become your everlasting spiritual wealth. Only at this point can it be considered as truly possessed by you. What you possess is truly yours. You already have this kind of wealth. If you don't have this, if you only look at it with your eyes and think about it a bit in your mind, and finally with your mouth, but in the end nothing remains with you at all. It's like drawing some water into a pot. You draw water here, but after it's done, all the water has been poured out, and the pot is still empty. So when we encounter such wonderful dharma, at the very least, for example, principles in the 37 practices of a bodhisattva are not difficult to grasp. As long as you can read, anyone with at least an elementary school education can understand them. But when it comes to our own actions, can we put into practice? If we were to practice, we would all become Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. That would be difficult. But if we don't do anything at all, I also habitually give everyone a talk, prepare a lesson and share it with you, and then you all, after class is over, are very happy and just go back to your usual ways as before. And if the Khenpos and Khenmos are also like this, even though we've spent a lot of time listening to these teachings, which are especially blessed and meritorious, planting virtuous roots, but to truly transform our own mental continuum, there are still some difficulties. So I also said that day that each of us, after learning Tibetan Buddhism, it is not easy to enter Tibet. After entering Tibet, it is not just about taking a few photos or listen to the merits of Gangdais. That's not the case. The nectar came down from the Gandaisi snow mountain, the nectar of Tibetan Buddhism. If it truly integrates into our hearts, then in the future there may be truly abundant and plentiful crops. This can greatly benefit countless living beings. Beings who are thirsty or hungry, this spiritual nourishment of ours can be unconditionally given to sentient beings with whom we have a karmic connection. If you don't have this, then the history of Gangdisi is just history. As for our Larungar, it's also just a small mountain valley. Sometimes I think the place where our Guru, His Holiness, went to study in the past was very, very small. But back then, when His Holiness was there, it was definitely not like the way we live here now. Life was very difficult then. But he had already obtained the true key to the treasury of wisdom in the lineage of his masters. He had already attained it. And later, when he eventually came here to spread the sacred Dharma, of course none of us can necessarily compare to the Guru Rinpoche, but in reality, wherever a person goes to study in the past, whether from Tibet or other places, they had to cross countless mountains and rivers, climbing over mountains and ridges to reach India, to seek teachings from some Panditas. Actually, the Panditas at that time, on the surface, they really just seemed like ordinary people. The conditions in India back then, perhaps they didn't even have Dharma texts, but later, after so many eminent monks and great masters returned, they brought the Dharma back and spread it. If you want to bring it back, it's not just about bringing back a Dharma text. Actually, the most crucial thing is that your mind must change. If your mind changes, then whether you have Dharma texts or not in the future, you will have the ability to spread the Dharma and to practice yourself. If your mind hasn't changed, then even when you're there, you might just muddle through, sleep in, or argue with others. If you just let things pass by in such a scattered way, then when you come back, it will be the same. Even if you spend 2 or 3 years at Harvard University, it's just a title, nothing more than that. So what we're talking about here is that even if it's just a short piece of writing, if you record it properly, that's great. Last year we asked everyone to keep a diary. Yesterday I said I might not necessarily give out awards. Maybe I'll just hand them out in class, that's fine. But I will still give a blessed item because it's also a symbol. It's also to see whether people are consistent throughout the year. If you get used to it, you can continue writing more on your own in the future. After some time, many things will be washed away by the passage of time. So it's still good to leave something behind for yourself. Even if we just write down one verse of Dharma each day and then observe ourselves, it's still necessary. So when it comes to practice, you cultivate it bit by bit. It's not like all at once. All this wisdom will merge into your ocean of wisdom. It's not like that either. So everyone still needs to work hard. Shall we perhaps stop our discussion here for today? Here, the act of immediately renouncing objects that give rise to attachment is praised. Then, as for the revered Atisha, let's discuss him in more detail tomorrow.
Bandara